She's turning up on time.
You send her a text.
We were just trying to start the meeting without Susie to go. No, I think that's the way.
Right, okay, let's start again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the area committee. We've got a few people here that we don't normally get, so I think we'll introduce ourselves. My name's Rosemary Carroll, I'm chairman of the area committee. Go to my right.
I'm Joan Eccles, a committee administrator at Pendle Council.
Mike Goldthorpe, Avian Coats Ward Councillor.
Jennifer Purcell, councillor for Craven Ward.
Paul Maskell, I'm chair of Calvert South Parish Council.
Tom Whip, I'm a councillor for Bonalswick Ward.
David Whip, I'm a councillor for Peabody and Courts Ward.
Chris Church, councillor for Bonalswick Ward.
Amanda Inman, Erie Town Council.
Kevin Singleton, Salford Parish Council.
Good evening, I'm Neil Watson, Planning Officer.
Good evening, David Walker, Environmental Services Manager and Area Coordinator for the West Craven Committee.
Okay, thank you. We have some speakers tonight. Can I just check that they're here? Lauren Stott, thank you, and Adrian Rose. Yeah, thank you. Okay, item one. Have we any police for absence tonight? Just Jordan. Yes, okay. Item one, anybody got any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Item two, this is public question time where we can give the public an opportunity to fetch anything up that is not on the agenda. Do we have anybody from the public who wishes to raise any points, questions? No? Okay. Item three, minutes of the last meeting. Somebody move on. Seconder? Yeah. No. Thank you. We don't know if the police are coming up, are going to turn up or not. So if it's alright with the rest of you, can we just leave that for the minute, just in case you do decide to turn up a bit later? Yeah? Alright. Item 5, planning applications. The first one is change of use from general industrial storage to use as a sports fitness at Sudbridge Mill, Eva. Got Lawrence Stott. I can give you 5 minutes to speak. But you can't, after that 5 minutes, you can't come back in.
Right.
Okay.
Do we need to start or does it matter? Thank you for allowing us time to represent this application. I'm the first time black belt in Taekwondo and I teach in Bonalswick, England and in Pendle schools. I love teaching, I love this job, and granting this change of use would allow me to provide better facilities, a better service to the Pendle residents. The benefits of it is that it supports the levelling up bill with increased provision for local sports and facilities, increasing health life expectancy, well-being and boost satisfaction with local culture. Success of the business has potential to boost jobs with our Alpha Team scheme, where we bring juniors through to be leaders. And Taekwondo is a disciplined sport that teaches resilience, focused attention and builds capability and confidence. Improves education outcomes. We've got lots of supportive comments from people around the community, as well as neighbours stopping and asking, can't wait to see our children come here. So, to address the concerns around the parking, which we thought we had done in the application, there are 37 car parking spaces in mill, plus 7 parking spaces on the roadside. Pendle Council have required us to have 11. And we'll be doing this when most of the building is shut otherwise. And also noise from the mill, classes are conducted near silence, we're in lines, it's disciplined, so it is pretty much spoken instruction. I'd like to comment on 2 of the LCC recommendations. One of those is the restriction to class sizes to 15. And while the average class size is 8 to 15, we feel this is quite limiting on the business. And we'd ask the committee to consider not imposing this limitation, or if they do, to limit it a bit higher, basically. As there are, as we've said, capacity for 42 cars, you know, we only needed 11. And the second one is the lighting to the rear car park, which I think on the paperwork is car park 3, which is like overflow car park. After speaking to the mill owner, we feel that it might be a problem with the neighbours, as it will shine straight into the neighbours' houses, which has never been lit before. So that's just something to consider as well on that front.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got any questions for Laura? I didn't tell Mr. Watson.
Chairman, I think it may be reasonable for you to consider, I mean, it is a reasonably small unit. The reason I think we're supporting this in many ways is because it's an evening activity. You may think it unreasonable restricting it to 15, because if the mill isn't active, there is plenty of car parking available. I've just seen the update. I haven't seen it before because I was in the management team. I don't agree with condition 9, by the way, about staggering sessions anyway in the update report. So I was going to bring that to your attention. So in terms of lighting, you don't have to have spotlights, you can have low-level lighting. And it is important that people are safe in there. So I think the lighting scheme is something you can do without glaring into people's back corners. You can put low level, it's just for a bit of safety. Chairman, there is one error as well. At condition 4, it says 9 to 12 on Sundays, and then it says the premises shall remain closed on Sundays, bank holidays and public holidays. It should say Saturday, so there is a minor element. So, Chairman, I think summing up, I think the lighting condition is reasonable. Condition 9, as set out in the report, I think is not reasonable. We shouldn't have that on. And then it's, I think, your discretion really whether you think 15 is the. We've got 15 because that's what's mentioned in the supporting statement. If you feel that that is unduly restricted, I think it's not unreasonable to allow more.
Thanks. Councillor Goldthorpe.
Yeah, are we happy about the opening hours? In general?
It takes from what the applicants have submitted, so it's in line with what they're asking.
There's adequate parking there, so I mean, I see no reason why you couldn't up the number of cars. You know, sorry, the number of, not cars, the number of people attending the courses. Because if you've got families or whatever, it doesn't offer a great scope if you've got, you know, sisters, cousins, brothers, parents.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 would be a sensible approach. Do we have restrictions anywhere else on this sort of numbers?
There are restrictions where we put on number of occupants for premises.
Is this down to the car parking rather than the number of?
It is about the car parking. Another council, I was reading a case in Blackburn about a play facility. They limited it, I read last night, to 60 children in there, so you can restrict it if there's a planning reason to do so.
I mean, I'd be happy to propose 20 and support what Mr. Watson said in terms of the other conditions, and support its approval.
What about the low level lighting?
I think that's a sensible approach. It's not exactly going to be, you don't have to do lights up in the air. surprised Tom hadn't mentioned about lighting. But there you go, yeah.
Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chairman. I disagree with the premise of LCC's comments and the conclusions. Limiting to 15 people assumes that every single person in the session has come in their own vehicle. And I think that's a very unfair assumption on the operators of this business. I think the unit isn't too far out from the centre. It is in a sustainable location, and therefore shouldn't be under the same rules for limiting the session occupancy as if assuming everyone is coming there by car. Because if the people in that session are from here, they live in the centre, they can easily walk there. In Bonalswick there's a bus service running quite regularly during the day, and therefore I think that a lot of LCC's conditions don't take that into account and therefore give an unfair conclusion. So, I mean, I'd strike most of these off, to be honest. I mean, the low lighting, fair enough, if it's expected to have a lot of evening use. But I would worry, if you're having lights in the car park, does that attract other nighttime vehicle users if it's open to the public, such as boy racers going to McDonald's there, etc. So I think I wouldn't have a limit on the number. I think the building itself lends itself to a certain number, and it's not going to exceed that for a session, so I think it's just a pointless condition. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Moscow.
Pretty much most of it's been covered by what Tom said. The only thing I was going to say, the only restriction I would see that's of any use is that's restricted by the building capacity, fire and safety of operating that. I don't know that there's really any sense in putting a limit on it. I think the operators will have to run for safety and fire purposes at a certain number to make it work. And I think in this situation, I agree with everything pretty much Tom said, and I don't see any reason for most of these conditions. I don't think they're really effective. I would probably argue not to have a condition, have the limit being almost a natural condition of the way the business is run, the occupancy of the facility of the room.
Okay, so more? No, are we in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Chair, for clarity, what conditions are we applying?
basically ignore most of what LCC have said, that we put low level lighting on and we don't limit the numbers, we limit it to the building capacity, whatever the owners are happy with under the health and safety, etc, etc.
So the proposed condition 8 is struck out.
Yeah, I've just got that in front of me.
Sure, I think it's conditions up to 7, 8 and 9.
8 and 9 drop off.
Yeah. 8 and 9 taken out. And then the lighting scheme is low level. Everybody in agreement with that?
Could I just clarify with Mr Watson before that, please? So condition 6, off-road parking indicated on approved plans, shall remain available for the use of the development hereby approved. Does that mean that they have to have that parking available for as long as that business exists?
So they can't block the car park off.
Right.
The business can't block the car park. You know, the wider business and not allow parking associated with it. So it's just saying allowing parking in accordance with the plans that they've submitted.
Right. Okay. And I wonder. So it stipulates that they have to have car parking arrangements shown in literature. I mean, that's very vague. So if they had such as a roadside board poster, would that be considered literature?
I think it's just any advertisement that they put out there to say there's parking on site, that's all they have to do.
Right. I mean, doesn't that encourage more car usage? Would it not be better to say, take the bus if you can? I mean, it just seems a bit counterproductive that you're having to have all these parking spaces, but then you're telling everyone you should drive here.
Yeah, but it is in the town centre. It's 2.5 miles, 2 miles away. People are, it's not going to survive off the village. People are going to come there, aren't they? And
Yes.
so whether we like it or not, people will drive there.
I'm not saying they won't, it's just there are bus routes. And, yeah.
Okay, councillor.
A virtue of the, well, if I say the main road, Avey South and Kelbrook, is that it's relatively flat, and it does mean that cycling is a very practical option. You're not expecting people to cycle up a hill, so why don't we say include, sort of the fact that there are cycling stands, there are facilities for cyclists. I think that should be included.
You could fit 15 people's bikes on 2 parking bays. It's a much better use of space.
So why aren't we including a condition requiring cycle parking facilities?
I think that's quite a bit over the top.
Well, I mean, the entirety of LCCs is based on the idea that everyone's going to be driving there, and that there's no other option to get there than a car. And so they are stipulating there's minimum amounts of parking requirement for cars, whereas for any other mode of transport it gives them freedoms to. And I think we should assume that some people may want to cycle, and if we can stipulate that it should provide a certain minimum number of bicycle parking spots, I think that's a good thing.
What does the rest of the committee feel? Do you want to put another condition on, Paul?
Whether you condition or not, I'll leave to the councillors to decide. But I think it certainly fits with sort of green travel policies and environmental policies. And I think I don't know whether we can stipulate under planning law how the business advertises itself, but certainly I think the opportunity to provide somewhere safe to park bikes is not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
So,
Chairman, the other aspect of this, I'm just moving on a little bit from cycling, but for active travel, sustainable travel, so is on a main, 2 main bus routes. We've got the mainline service that comes through South, and for most of the time provides a frequent, regular service, and we've got the Skipton Preston bus that goes through there as well. So if we're serious about measures to encourage multi-day transport, then if we're going to stipulate there's the car parking in any advertisement for the company, then we should say, well, they should include we are on the main bus route. We need to move away, and this is Councillor Tom Whip that's been berating me for years now, that we need to move away from assuming that car travel is the norm and actually start to highlight the other ways of moving about that in the long run is absolutely essential, and the short run is very, very desirable.
okay. So what's the rest of the committee think? Do we want to add a condition about green public cycling days?
I would second Councillor Tom Whip's proposal that we do add in a requirement for cycle parking and its advertisement in the literature.
Yes, no?
No comment.
No comment? No? Yes, Councillor Church.
Could I just say, Chairman, as far as the advertising of the facilities, I'm presuming that most of the attendants will be repeat business.
I would have thought so, yeah.
So we'll be telling the majority of them what they already know once a week or whatever when they turn up. Is it is there anything to be gained from stipulating that they advertise it?
Not really, it's up to the business themselves how they advertise it, isn't it?
Well, not according to LCC's conditions.
Can I help,
The
Chair?
planning
Why
board.
don't we just take away the LCD's comment? Because we've been sat here all night talking
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
dancing at the Daily Whip's favourite comment of dancing on a pinhead. I think the point's made.
Let's go.
Just take it out. I mean, I must admit, I do not like telling businesses how to advertise their business.
Exactly, can't do
But at
that.
the end of the day, it's entirely up to them. I shouldn't want to incur any further costs for the business. So just forget that point.
Okay, so you're saying take away all,
Take it out.
take it all out. Okay. Well, Councillor Whip's put a proposal forward that we put a conditioning for cycling days. So
Provision for cycle parking.
cycle days, whatever we call them. So we'll have to vote on that one first. Or do we put it as a whole, or I'm not sure which way to go with this one.
Does the dissent?
I think did Councillor Griffith no proposal approved to it?
Yeah, you did.
Was there any, if anyone seconded that, it's amendment, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's amendment in that we add cycle days. So all those in favour of that, we add cycle days. All those against? That's lost. So we'll go to the main item agenda now. We have approval without any of these county comments in.
Including the low level lighting scheme.
Do you want to leave the law level?
I think you need
Leave the law level.
Okay.
So all we're going to do off the counter is leave the low level lighting in.
Chairman, I'm making the car parking available, but not the advertising. Is that
Yeah? Okay?
And
All those,
good luck with the business.
all those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Okay, your application is approved with those minor conditions. Okay, let's move on to the next planning application.
Cost a fortune.
Certificate of lawfulness for a residential children's home on Storm Shop Lane, Kelrow. We've got Mr Adrian Rose here to speak. Again, I can give you 5 minutes to speak, but I can't let you back in after this. Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Maybe knows I'm a planning consultant who specialises in the form of care home that you've got before you tonight. The officer report concludes that planning permission should be requested for this use, but we think this is based on 2 incorrect assumptions. Firstly, that it uses the figure of more than 6 people in the household. This isn't true, and I'll explain later. Secondly, it assumes that the comings and goings of this use would be greater than have happened in the past on this property. Again, that's incorrect. What's proposed here is a home which gives a chance for 3, possibly 4 people, but the actual number is dictated by Ofsted, to give a chance to lead a normal, fairly close to a family life so that they can progress and develop as individuals. The government has found that this form of accommodation is ideal for helping people who would otherwise go to institutions and then struggle when they have to come into the outside world. Trying to recreate a family environment gives them a chance to progress and hopefully lead good, fulfilling, independent lives. These are the types of children who normally go to foster parents, but there aren't enough foster parents. Many of you may have seen an article or a programme on BBC television, Michael Sheen. He actually did a programme focusing on the needs of these particular children and just how desperately the need is for this form of accommodation. Now, if I could address I think the errors in the report. Firstly, it's based on the fact that there's an assumption there are more than 6 people going to be sort of living in the property. Well, 6 is not a relevant number anyway for a C2 application, but what will happen, there will be 2 carers who work on 48-hour shifts, who live on the property, and there will be 3, possibly 4 children. So the 6 isn't relevant. The second assumption about the comings and goings. Well, I provided with the application a very detailed schedule based on what the actual comings and goings will be. Firstly, these aren't speculative. The first are based on the existing use of the house from the owner has been very good and copied in terms of how many is normal comings and goings from the house. And secondly, my knowledge of this form of accommodation, this form of home throughout the country. Because of Ofsted, they do require these homes not to be institutionalised. They must be as near a close family environment as you can get. So there's no difference in terms of comings and goings than a normal household. You don't, and the report sets out in some detail, obviously I haven't got time to go into it now, that when you get visits from Ofsted, social services, you don't have gardeners or cleaners, etc. It's all done within the same house. I do believe that there's no material difference between what we're proposing and the existing use. If we're forced to make an application, clearly we may have to, all the information you'll get back is exactly what you've got here. And it'll be to say, well, this is it will operate and be simply like a normal family house. We have tested these on appeal. We'd be very reluctant to have to go to appeal on this one. I do hope you will consider carefully what I've said and approve this lawful development certificate application to allow this much needed facility to be established. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, has anybody got any questions for Mr. Rose? Yeah, Councillor.
If I may, Chairman, you say the number of 6 isn't relevant, and then you stress that there would be just 2 carers and so on and so forth. The carers, they're not going to be working 24/7, are they? They're going to...
No, the nature of this, the type of activity is the carers work on a 48-hour shift, 48, sometimes even 60-hour shift. So you have 2 days on, sometimes 3 off. So they're there all the time. You have one carer who would come in the day, and this is why I think the case officers wrongly interpreted that as a member of the household. So basically, these are long-term carers. These aren't the people who are coming and going every day. They only change. The carers will only change once every single day, so that the carers on site will alternate and one will be there all the time.
So just to, I can get it clear in my head, people who are working either 2 or perhaps more than 2 days.
Yes.
And there'll be other people who will come in on a daily basis.
There's only one person who will come in, the care home manager will come in on a daily basis from Monday to Friday, usually between 9 o'clock and 5 o'clock.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Mr. Watson, have you anything to add?
No, well, just a couple of points, Chairman. It's accepted, and the applicant accepts that it's a C2 use. We agree with that. So what case law basically is saying a C2 use, which is a care home, as opposed to a dwelling house, can you tell there's a different use of that site? If your view is, as a committee, that there's no difference, can't tell discernibly it's different, then you should grant the certificate of lawfulness. It's not about the merits of it and however laudable it is or not is irrelevant. It's whether you can tell a normal person that place is operating in a different way than a normal dwelling house. And that's effectively the case between us. We feel that it is marginal, I've got to say. It's in the schedule between current use and proposed use. I think there's slightly more use proposed, if I'm honest with you, with some of the recreational activities possibly that play within that. But it's about that coming and going. If you believe that, in your view, how it will operate is akin to a house, then you should grant the certificate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rose. Yeah, 1 second. I have been sent a letter on behalf of the local residents, which they wanted me to read out to, so I will do. Members will be aware of their officer's recommendations on the application with which local residents wholly agree. The proposed change from a C3 use to a C2 use requires planning permission. There is no lawful change of use permitted between these two use classes, and as a result the applicant's attempt to achieve their proposed change of use via a lawful development certificate route is flawed and an apparent attempt to avoid due process. The residents are also of the view that should a subsequent application for planning permission be made for the change of use, the officer's report to this committee sets out valid planning reasons why that should fail, namely that the proposed use is incompatible with this location and would give rise to the increased vehicle movements and associated levels of noise that will be out of character with and adversely affect the residential amenity of neighbouring residents in this rural location. The residents would respectfully ask that you agree with the professional recommendation of your officers and refuse this application. And that's on from a selection of residents in Keldor.
Chairman, I think I need to advise the committee on that. The second part of that is irrelevant.
Right.
The first part of it is legally flawed. The courts are quite clear that this is the route that you can go down to establish whether it's a C2 or C3. It's not an automatic change of usage required. Going back, and the court cases are, if the C3 and C2 uses are indiscernible, you grant. Very clear on that. It's not C3, C2, you apply for planning permission. That's legally flawed. So, and it's not what the residents have put in there, but it is not the way the committee should decide this application.
Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not convinced that they are that different. I think the number of 6 people is quite arbitrary. I mean, there's families in Barnoldswick larger than that. You have grown adults who, say grown adults, go into work, the parents go to work, and that traffic movement is not going to be very dissimilar. And I think that, you know, just because it's a care home as opposed to a large family, they're not incredibly different things. And I mean, therefore, I'm inclined to say that it would be a lawful thing. But I'm open to the committee discussion.
Okay, Councillor Davis.
Well, I think Mr Watson said that it was marginal. I'd come to a different view to Councillor Tomwick, and I think, heeding Mr Watson's advice, we're not looking at the demerits or the merits of a planning application here. What we're looking at is the subtleties of, is it a lawful use or is it not a lawful use? And we should put out of our minds any other consideration. So I think it is sufficiently different that it's not a lawful use, and the C3, C2 issue is such that the lawful use certificate should be declined. That doesn't stop the organisation coming forward with the planning application. Clearly, from what was said earlier on, there could be an appeal against the certificate of lawful use decision. There might be a twin track approach, but I Chair, believe that there would be sufficient distinction between the use as a normal dwelling and the proposed use as a residential / children's home.
Okay, Councillor Musgrave.
Yeah, first I'd like to say that the parish council hasn't met since this application came forward, because we didn't meet in August. So all I can report back is that the parish council has had a number of different representations, some of it represented in the letter you've got, but equally to talk about the other side. And I think from our perspective, then I'm probably saying this as a member of this group as opposed to purely just representing the parish council, because the parish council hasn't formed a view, just to be clear about that. But I think the exam question is exactly as set out by Mr. Watson, and it's quite a straightforward and simple one, really. And I think the judgment is based on, is there a sufficient enough difference? It seems to me that the key element in this is the movement of vehicles and traffic, and is that going to be any different? Now, I think we have to be careful to remember that the house is currently occupied by a couple, and it's a big house with 6 bedrooms, but actually it could live, if it was sold to a normal household buying it, it could actually have potentially 6, 7 people living in it, if you assume that there's a parent in the conventional status and 5 other people occupying bedrooms. So there could be anything up to 7 regular movements of vehicles backwards and forwards across there. So I mean, that's the capability of what this house is designed to put up with. So I don't think it should be based on what exists at the moment. It should be looked at the property as it is against the question that is being asked about, are you changing this or that? So again, it's up to councillors to decide, but I think we need to be very clear on making sure that councillors answer the exam question, which is as Mr. Watson set out, as opposed to worrying about too much of my personal view. I probably tend to agree with Councillor Tomway, but I say that I don't get a vote.
No, but you can move and second things.
I can listen.
Councillor.
Yeah, I think it's clear to me the reason for the decision. The applicant has failed to substantiate that on the balance of probability, the proposal does not need planning permission. Recommendation: refuse lawful development certificate. Straightforward. I understand Watson said it's marginal. I tend to support Councillor David Wick's views on this, so I'm sorry about that, Tom. I don't know whether David's going to propose that we refuse this as in line with officers, but I certainly would propose it if David isn't. Or if he is, I'll second it.
Okay, so they're proposing it.
Yeah.
So the on the table is to refuse the application. All those in favour?
Chair, I speak, sorry. I'd rebut that assertion, Councillor Gawthorpe. That comment there is just it's the opinion of the author of the report, and it's very often that we do not agree with that opinion of the author. And this committee is sort of nefariously known among Pendle for not agreeing with those opinions of the author. And so I think basing the decision entirely on that opinion of the author is a bit ingenuous. And I do genuinely believe that they are not sufficiently different. And therefore I would propose an amendment that it is a lawful use. And I really want people to consider why that's true, and it's just that a care home really isn't that different from a big dwelling. It's just not.
Okay, have you got a second for your amendment?
I'll second it because I think it needs a vote.
Okay. Did you want to come back in, Councillor Gawthorpe?
No.
Okay, so the amendment is that we approve it. All those in favour? 1, 2. All those against? 3. That is lost. Okay, so we'll move to the motion to refuse the application. All those in favour? 4. Anyone against? 1, 2. Sorry. That is the application is refused. Thank you. So move on. Right, it doesn't look like the police are coming, so we will just go back to Article 4. Has anybody got anything that they want to tell the police about? Councillor Purcell?
Yes, usual case, boy races. I've had 3 emails from residents down the Rainbow Road to where Salem with boy races. They've fed up a bit. There's somebody going to be killed. Same down Gisborne Road, it's still happening. We're still having problems with around Victory Park, drug dealers and youths at 3 o'clock in the morning behaving antisocial behaviour, nothing done about it. This has been going on and on and on. But the main thing is the speed of the traffic. I don't know what was happening on Saturday morning, but the police came tearing through Church Street up towards Manchester Road. They came back down the road. Whether that was a speeding car, we don't know. But at the end of the day, why do we have to wait till somebody's been killed? Going through Bracewell is exactly the same, with no consideration for speed limits whatsoever.
Okay. Councillor Webb?
Chairman, I want to look at something different, but just comment on what Jennifer said. I don't expect there to be a police officer on every corner, and it's certainly the case at the moment that the policing of West Craven, the neighbourhood policing, is seriously deficient. We have just one police community support officer, Neil Wallin, who is covering the whole of West Craven and Falbridge. The local policing officer that was appointed several months ago, I have never seen. I understand that he's off to Pastures New, and or he's gone to Pastures New because he's not here. And the whole policing of our area is wholly inadequate. Whether or not they can do a special operation to try and address speeding traffic is debatable. They have managed to do it elsewhere in Pendle. I know that the inspector that we've got at the moment has a background in roads policing, so she's clearly familiar with that and supportive of doing operations. But we're not effective, we're not going to see anything of any great effect in terms of enforcement. But there's another side to this, which is that the county council are the highway authority, and in many cases the county council can put things in place that actually address road safety issues. And we haven't seen a great deal of activity. It's several years ago that the budget was decimated. I think it's been built back up again. But I don't see any road safety projects taking place in West Craven. So I think the criticism is genuine, but I think the criticism needs to be levelled as much at the highway authority, the county council, as it is at the police in terms of their enforcement of the rules. Moving on from that, Chairman, I wanted to look at the figures for assaults, because in the report that we've got, it shows that the number of assaults has gone up by 11. If you look at last year's figure, there were just 9. The number of assaults has more than doubled to 20 during the month of August. And I would look at that figure with a great deal of concern to ask what on earth is going on. And I think the priority for this committee of an ask to the police is why have the number of assaults gone up so much? if you look at the spread of them, and the police are working on the old ward boundaries, but you see that in Craven last August 2021, and you know, given the pandemic, things were different. In Craven there were 2, that's gone up to 5. In Airby it's gone from 4 to 5, but in Coates Ward it's gone up from 3 to 10. So clearly the increase is concentrated in Coates Ward. There may not be any link between any of these incidents, any of these crimes, but you know, there's something going on there, and I think as a committee we should be asking the police you know, to give some explanation as to what's caused the increase in numbers, and more importantly what action is being taken to address the number of assaults that have been reported. Chairman, I think given the absence of any police officers, I mean, I've got some other issues that I would have raised, but I'm not going to do so if they're not here. But I think we need to find out about the hate crime. That's sorry, the assaults.
I don't know if you read, well, you probably have heard the big old car smashed on the garage down New Road, and there was quite a few thousand pounds of damage there. I know in the last few days there's been a lot on allotments. A lot of it is teenagers and that, and I think people have stopped reporting stuff because they just know nothing's happening at all. And it's,
so we need more police patrols in here.
well, as well, I think initially come round and ideas for how we can engage young people, I know, because to be honest, there's absolutely nothing.
Well, no, we're out there, but I can't say to
It's I think the ones who are ringleaders who are doing stuff need consequences, but then if there's nothing else for anyone else to do, you end up doing the same groups and doing more and more. And there's large groups roaming around at night, you can hear them all, and it's like you need a bit of police help with how to tackle things, and some consequences for the ones who are doing a lot of damage.
certainly that's a question. Kevin,
Just to agree with Councillor Whipple-Purcell about speeding cars. Salterforth, particularly on Friday and Saturday night, is horrendous. There's cars doing 90 miles an hour at least. You can just about hear them coming and see them going from the top of where the concrete bridge is going over the canal right through, and it's become a racetrack. And somebody is going to get killed. And I don't know whether the LTC are interested or not, perhaps because we're far away from Preston for folk to realise. But why can't they do a simple thing like a race crossing at the Pelican traffic lights at Salterforth? It works. I go through Lower Bentham and it works there. People have to slow down, otherwise they're taking the cars. And it's if ever anybody stops me in the street, it's about the speeding cars. And keep asking what can we do about it, and we're totally exasperated. But in saying that, I've been going through some historical archives, and in next year it's 90 years since the first complaint about speeding cars, so they've had 90 years to do something about it, so it's about time something were done. And it is, I suggest the sergeant inspector comes and sits at the crossroads about 7 o'clock on a Saturday night and sees if it's fit to even try and cross the roads, even with Pelican crossings. The schools have cracked up again, and it's full of parents just going to school on the phones. They don't even stop at red lights, they just go straight through. I can't understand why there isn't a camera on every single traffic light, and they must make an absolute fortune. They could be ploughed back in. But nothing seems to happen, we just seem to come here, say something, and nothing happens.
Okay. Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, speeding traffic, antisocial vehicle use. I think while enforcement is a huge part of it and it's important, it really is that integrated approach from the engineers as well as enforcement action that that needs to be taken. I mean, Salterford, it had the speed limit reduced, it had a couple of measures for speeds, but the road itself stayed the same width. I mean, it's a wide road, it's designed for fast moving vehicles, it's got straightened out curves, smooth gradients, and all of those things tell drivers they can drive fast, no matter what the speed limit is. That road needs narrowing, it needs raised crossings, it needs complexity, because complexity is what slows drivers down. And that can be signage, but more or less it is the design of the road. And so engineers at LCC need to get the finger out, design a scheme to actually reduce speeds there, improve pedestrian safety, and get it done. And that needs to happen all over West Craven. All of these places where there's speeding vehicles, it can be down to the engineering of that section of road. And as much as you might want to have a run of enforcement action, in a year, 2 years down the line, that enforcement action stops, there's not the budget for it, and it just happens again. And nothing will happen until there is changes in the routes of the system, the road network, to fix that problem. Chair, not a question for anyone here, but I wonder if we can get vehicle crimes as an incident category, antisocial driving, whatever. I don't know what the category would include, but maybe they have one already in the system. So I'd like you to ask that question. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer.
Yes, going back to Lancashire County Council highways, well, you see these roads around here, you might as well talk to them and get a proper answer. We've got parish councillors sat round here tonight and round other villages. Councillor Gawthorpe, myself, take a look at the railings around this town here. I asked in December to get these railings sorted out. They can, I'm not joking, I have been on and on and on about the railings around here. Children are going to school, you've got a school there outside where the railings are, you've got that up area. I've even sent them a video of the person that had crashed into there. I've had to go one of the managers out last week, concerned about the state of here and the road markings and everything and the state of the road, same down at Fernley. But we're all shouting from the same inbox over and over again. Yes, we do need some more police here. I'm still waiting for an email from Neil Wall, and I feel sorry for that officer because he can't deal with everything. He even was mentioned last night at another parish council meeting, but nobody's back from him. Not even his own MP can't get an email back from him. And that was mentioned last night. But the thing is, we're all shouting the same thing over and over again. And it's about the safety aspects of these people that are driving. There's no considerations, it's a case of 2 fingers up, I couldn't care less. But at the end of the day, it isn't for the want of trying. We've all tried, one way or another. And we can all sit round here, but it's the head of the highways department that needs to pull the finger out. I've got to the stage where I don't know what to do or how to do, but these railings were supposed to have been put in last week. Have they put them in? No, but with children walking up to school, and yet that's an health and safety issue. If you did that, you'd have been pulled over, go for it. And it's the same with the police. With no police, with one police officer having to cover all of Pendle Rural, which is an absolute disgrace. But there comes a time, I've even been on to the police commissioner about it all, and asked, where are our police? Yes, we know it takes 3 years to train a policeman, but at the end of the day, why should we suffer? Our residents pay for a service. We're not getting a service, but the police force get more than what we pay for as rates. Okay. So therefore, we should expect a better service. I am really disappointed in them at the moment.
All right, Councillor Gawthorpe.
Yeah, 2 quick points. One in support of what David Whip said about assaults. I'm also interested to see the large increase in all recordable incidents in Craven. Probably we should ask why we've gone from 20 to 40 and the rationale behind it. So that'd be worth doing. Just a quickie about on Saturday there was dirt bike riders going up Water Street, Red Lion Street, Millbrow, supported by a chase vehicle, if that's the right word. No registration, no acts. It was reported to the police police said they'd be there in half an hour, they never turned up. So it's another issue. And I wouldn't disagree with anything at all that's been said tonight on the subject of what we just spent 15-20 minutes talking about.
Okay, Councillor Church.
Thanks. Very briefly, mostly covered by others now. I just want to emphasise, as I did before, from what Councillor Purcell says, I know that boy racers are the most high profile, to put it that way, of the offenders. But I think a wider problem, it comes from the wider demographic of all types and kinds, who are maybe not doing 90 down the new road, but might be doing that little bit too fast all over the area. Now, I think from what we've said, and this is just a rough guess, the problem people emphasise about boy racers is probably more a police issue, but about speeders in general, it's probably more about mechanical and engineering matters on possible improvements. And I just want to support everyone who says that that should be considered as well. It's probably, I know it's probably going to be a lot, I wouldn't say easier because nothing is easy. It's more possible that we can get some kind of engineering solutions, a lot more likely that we can get a few more bobbies on the job.
Okay, Councillor.
Yes, Chairman, just coming back to the engineering solutions, and forgive me for being long in the tooth, but over the years, over the decades, just thinking about Calvert Road, Balmolswick Road, going through Salterford, I mean, I've been involved with many efforts to make that road safer, and going back into the 1980s, we had quite a lot of action in terms of, well, not narrowing the road, but making the perceived width of the road narrower by putting the carriageway edge markings there, putting pedestrian islands in to narrow the road, introducing gateway features which narrow the road, and at the Calbrook end we swapped the highly dangerous Y-shaped junction onto the A56 for a roundabout. Now, in both, well, along Calbrook Road, through the crossroads at Salterford, and at the Calbrook end, there had been a horrendous number of casualties and deaths with people far too regularly being killed, and engineering measures were put in place. And I mean, I recall the roundabout at Calbrook cost £100,000, which, you know, today's money would probably be, you know, sort of knocking on £500,000 sort of thing. But that work was done, and the number of deaths, the number of casualties has reduced. So work can be done if there's a will to do it. Now, I'm very strongly of the opinion that, you know, it is a highway authority function. So if we're going to be contacting the police about the enforcement, I think coupled with that needs to be an additional resolution that says to the County Council, you know, we are concerned about these issues, and we believe that engineering measures should be put in place in order to address the road safety concerns that we have. And there are many, but at the moment, I mean, the County Council aren't doing a thing about any of them. And, you know, if they could address the high priority issues, then that would be good. So I propose that.
Okay, right, let's move on. Item 5B, appeals. Anybody got anything on appeals they want to burn in?
Chairman, yeah, just on the first one there, which is the 14 dwelling houses off Ben Lane and the appeal there. I was very disappointed that you, Chairman, and the leader of the council refused to work on a case against this appeal. Mr Watson, planning manager, notified both Councillor Ahmed, yourself and myself that he was professionally debarred from preparing the case to rebut the appeal. Given the refusal of yourself and the leader of the council who chaired the Policy and Resources Committee and used his casting vote for the decision that we took as a planning authority, I ended up doing, I will have to say, a poor job of putting a case together. I was able to articulate the reasons why I'd opposed the development on the flooding grounds in terms of the compromise of the flood wall. But quite frankly, I'm not a planning professional.
Council work.
No, but you refused to help put the case together.
Because I couldn't, I had to agree, I couldn't find any strong reasons to refuse it, I'm afraid.
Well, but you voted that way.
Because you knew a lot more about it than I did.
Well,
and we've always agreed with you.
Chairman, at the Policy and Resources Committee, it was Conservative councillors who introduced the landscaping at the edge of settlement issues, and you know there was no support whatsoever for articulating the case for that. So I mean, the deadline has passed now. I am just expressing my very, very great disquiet that the political administration at Pendle have just washed their hands of this and you know, left this appeal to be determined with an inadequate response.
Good point. Anything else on appeals? No? Okay, moving on. Item 6, enforcement. Anybody got anything on this one? Yeah, Councillor.
The former Gospel Mission Hall on Holland Road, which shouldn't say Gospel Hall because it isn't. The final sentence has remained unchanged for quite some time now. The matter is to be taken back to court as the notice has not been complied with. And I wonder, Neil, whether we know when.
Chairman, I emailed the solicitor dealing with it last week to say where are we with it. I have no date. I will I'll chase again.
It's on. Yeah, there's an update on item 13, which we can't.
Well, I'm not sure why we can't.
No, that is so weird. But we've got it on item 6, yeah, it's on item 13. But we can discuss it now, we can't discuss it for item 13.
Yeah, because it's had a formal notice, it's in the public domain, so it's probably take it off. But this is a problem site, so you want it on there to deal with thereafter as well as the prosecution. So it is on both. You can discuss it now, obviously, because it's a court document which finds him guilty.
Right. So, Chairman, looking at item 13, which is to be taken when we've got press public excluded, what that says, the court has given some time for the owner to try and resolve the issue with Pendle. Well, I mean, this goes back 5 years, 6 years. It last went to court on 25th of July 2019, which is 3 years ago. So how much time does the court expect for it to take to get some resolution? Because we're going into the decades now. It's not a matter of years. And residents are frankly fed up of seeing this rack and ruin building continuing to fall apart in front of their eyes. And then we've got kids going in and the dangers that poses and so on and so on and so forth.
Do we know how long they've been given?
Chair, it's my fault. I should have updated that, but that came after the court date. We've long past that time, so we can prosecute without.
We can go ahead.
Yeah, one of the questions I had was because of the length of time, do we have to serve them the notice? And the answer I got back was no, we can still prosecute again.
Right. So we will go ahead and prosecute.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get some more concrete information through Joanna or myself, email it.
Okay. All right, thanks. Anything else on that? No. Item 7, capital programme. Just noting. Councillor Church.
I just raise a minor technicality here.
Yeah, Marjorie Allen. Don't tell her. Okay, item 8. Traffic flow questionnaires in for town centre. We had a site visit on this one. Have we got an update?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so coming out of, and I thank everyone who came to the site visit. I think it was very productive. But the outcome of that is the engineers have put in 5 options together, 4 ways we can improve the traffic flows and pedestrian areas in the town centre. And I mean, we'll see those in due course. I think that we all agree on some basis that there does need to be improvements there. And I think it's just a matter of gauging public opinion and inviting comments on the options for things we might not have considered to gauge the direction. And I'm very much looking forward to that. So,
okay, what should we have to say? Okay, Councillor.
Chairman, given that there was broad agreement that we should consider different options when we had the site visit, and that Scott Worley and his crew were working those up, can we give some thought as to how we would seek public views, how we would consult on those different options? Could we do something, have a display? Well, no, I mean, I think it's something that affects the populace of the town. So, people will have a view. Clearly, the occupants of buildings, whether the residents, businesses, will have views. But it's a wider scheme of things that we need to be looking at. So, as a committee, can we organise a consultation event? Can we have a display? Unfortunately, we've got a couple of empty shops on Albert Road at the moment. It would be opportune to set some plans up there, even if just in the window, so people could say, well, we think this and that and the other. Nowadays, something on social media would be as well. We could have an opportunity for people to comment online.
Well, I think we need to wait until we get these options in front of us with the costings, and then we can see where we are and where we're going to find the money from to do this.
Chair, I think
some of them weren't cheap.
I think cart before the horse there. Well, it is. I mean, the money thing. With these things, you never know where the money's coming from in advance. It could be it sits on a shelf for the next 3 years. But we should still get a plan together so that if funding does come available from government, we can say, we have a shovel-ready project, we've already consulted on it, let's get going.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
But
so-
I think let's get the
And
options
we're
from our
all here
engineers
agreeing
first.
that there are improvements that should be made, and so I think we should agree in advance that once those options come out of engineering, they've got some good drawings and illustrations to go with them, that we should get them out there as soon as, so we can gauge public opinion.
And Chairman, I mean, the options are what we discussed on the site visit. We know what the different options
we
are,
know.
so, you know, we're not sort of plucking things out of the air. It's, you know, these are real suggestions that just need documenting so that people can see what they are. So I'm suggesting that we have a public, you know, consultation initiative, call it that, which, you know, let's have a look at how we could do it. So we establish the principle at this meeting and then, you know, get on with working out the detail of it.
Yeah, when we get the details through.
Well, we work out the detail of the consultation activity. So, you know, shop window, that's straightforward. Online, I'm not quite sure just, you know, what the best option there is. But if we agree that we're going to need to consult on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's agree that we're going to consult on it, and then when, you know, we get a report back on we can do it X, Y, Z. So I'm proposing that we agree to get on with consulting on the options that we discussed on the site visit.
Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, when I've seen everybody out there, now, like I'm saying, we you know, you've got to get reviews from not just ourselves. I mean, you've got shopkeepers, you've got general public that use the town square that come round in the cars and whatever, yeah. But the sooner you put something there for the general public to see, it doesn't matter whatever it is, it's like when you were doing the town square and reorganising that, they had a choice to look at it, and if they didn't like what they were seeing, they could say, right, well, I don't want this, I don't want that. But why should we turn around to the general public and say, right, you're having this, you're having it, let them have a choice at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, I think we're all in agreement that we will consult, but we
let's
need
get,
them
I mean,
options to come forward
yeah, let's
first.
have the 5 options come
In front of
forward,
us, yeah.
and then put them in the shop,
Absolutely.
everything.
Yeah.
Chair, I think the point Councillor Whip's making is we know what those 5 options are, what we discussed on the site visit. There's not anything new coming out of those. I mean, we said there and then to Scott what those are.
Yeah, but we need Scott to draw these up so that we can put them in the windows
Right,
for people to see.
it doesn't matter if he draws it with blue or green ink, the options are still what we said. And so we can go ahead. Chair, just interestingly on the side, I mean, I've always thought that taking a shortcut down Newtown was quicker than going the long way around. We actually did a few time-ins, and on average, it is almost a minute longer to go through Newtown to Church Street than it is to go down Fernley Avenue. So yeah, I mean, things like that, people might not think that. I mean, we mentioned it to Miles, owner of the pie shop on Newtown, and he always thought it was quicker. And I think, yeah, we just need to put something out there, get people thinking about it, let their brains work on it, and it'll come out better.
Yeah, just to back Tom up on that, Chairman, he had me driving around in circles, and you know, we went both routes several times, and previously my perception had been that if you were coming to these traffic lights here, it was faster to go along Raynor Road down Newtown to get onto Church Street, and the test that we did showed that that was completely and utterly wrong. It actually takes longer to go what you think is a shortcut.
All right,
So, yeah.
we will agree to consult.
Right, good.
Everybody in favour of that? Yep. Okay. Item 9, environmental blight. Has anybody got any burning issues on this one?
Sorry, just some clarification. Are you agreeing to consult now before you get...
We're agreeing in
No, we-
principle to the
we
consultation
agree in
exercise
principle.
of the 5
We're agreeing in
options.
principle.
in due course that you
Yes.
consult.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody, any burning issues on environmental blight? Yes.
I know it's on at 13 as well, but
Which shed?
the gates have been
No, we're not on there yet.
No. Oh, but
If it's on the pink sheets, then we can talk about it when we get to it.
oh right, we can't.
It's I know, it's frustrating. Okay, item 10, Dr. Road and car parking issues. You've seen the report, you've seen the response back, haven't you? Oh, I missed it. Yeah, the update on this one. Grown update on one.
Yeah, it was regarding
Yeah.
trees, wasn't it? So,
Yeah, regarding the trees, you've got the update.
That's paragraph 2.
Yeah, sorry.
So trees are okay. Our new tree officer went and had a look at them. Slight signs of ash dieback, but he wasn't really concerned about them and the condition of them at this stage.
Okay.
The service manager will provide an update at the meeting on whether the planning approval conditions for development on Doctors Road had been implemented as required.
I think the word is will. Chairman, I've asked Mr. Brackhoff, Gray to look at those. He's been away for a few weeks on holiday, so fine. I'm trying to...
For next meeting. Okay. Alright, item 11, outstanding items. Councillor.
Can you tell us about North End Community Centre? Have we actually anything off together housing at all?
No.
Because it's saying transfer of the community centre, but we haven't even had a look round, we haven't had any reports back, so...
Dead as a doorknob.
I'll have chased email.
But they're not responded.
Am I allowed to do a bit of chasing?
Of course you are.
Right,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, and you've got the letter from Lancashire County Council. Again, they're saying, I'm not right one. I must be where Chapman Court. Have we any updates on any others? It's an easier way of doing it.
Tom, no, to come out or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, go on.
Chair, just dodging back to traffic issues on Skipton Road, Junction Courts Lane. I think we're going back to what we were talking about earlier in this meeting. And, I mean, this all started because people have died at that junction. Multiple fatalities, there's still a shrine there from the last time it happened. And yet another month has gone by where there has been nothing from LCC. I mean, we had a meeting online with someone who works there. We tried to brainstorm ideas for solutions and battered them back. And nothing has come out of it.
I did see Scott Ward today and mentioned this specific item, and he said he would have a word with Matt, I can't remember his surname, from LCC.
It came on the site visit the
So
other
he said he
day.
would try and have another discussion to try and bring something forward.
Yeah, I think we just need to be sort of keeping on at this, because it's not, sort of a grass verge somewhere that someone isn't cutting. I mean, this is something that takes people's lives, and it's so distressing that they can go for months on end and not provide any solutions at all. It really is.
And Chairman, just to remind people that the manager in question had promised that he would do a number of things, but those things included looking at the road layout and getting the interactive signs that tell people to slow down frankly, this has been, what, how many months has it? It must have been 6 months.
Yeah. It is.
So why, why have we not got anything?
They won't respond to us.
Yeah, but they said they were going to do it, or not. They said they were going to come back with proposals to what they could do. They did say that they would get the traffic lights, not the traffic lights, the interactive signs working if they didn't need replacement. But
John, are you getting any of that
despair.
stuff, or are they just ignoring you?
They ignore everybody.
So for most of these, they're just not applying to you.
Well, no, I think in some cases they reply, don't
Yeah,
they?
they reply,
Yeah.
And then we go back to them, so it's
Yours.
each one going back to them, it's sometimes difficult
Yeah.
to get a further response. But
Well,
I am still chasing them, and
and we can see what Scott can do, see if he can sort of Jenny.
Yeah, I mean, going on to it, I mean, just looking at here, request to upgrade the carriageway on Station Road over here. I fetched out a manager because of the railings and the road, no road markings, like Councillor Whip and themselves, they've all said the same. It's horrendous over there. I showed him Fernley Avenue, well, there's better roads in Beirut, I think. Now I showed him that, can't see nothing wrong with it. I showed him the other one where I call it the Humpty Dumpty on Skipton Road, Fernley Avenue, down there. Nothing wrong, it's the worst strip hazard going. And it's like everything else with LCC, you might as well just talk to that board because they will not reply back to you. And if they come back to you, it is an incompetent reply when you get what you get back. I have tried, I've better tried. And we've all tried around this table. Pendle Council has done the same. Joanne sent letters to them. Nobody, they're just ignoring. Your rural areas, they are just ignoring us. And it's high time that we pull his foot down and said enough is enough. I mean, these things are getting out of hand. We're putting people's lives at danger. If a cyclist were coming down that road now at that junction, he'd be killed. He would be killed. Which state of that road is? No. How much is it for to replace the railings in Pendle? £36,000 I were told. That's all we've got in a pot. Absolutely disgusting. And I'm getting a bit cheesed off with it all with highways, and that's the only department that I don't seem to be getting any joy with. And it's high time we started sending strong letters back to them and saying we're not going to put up with it.
Okay, we have got an update on Cornwall Place. Legal services are awaiting evaluation of the land prior to considering any acquisition. There should be more report to the October meeting on that one. And Chapman Verge Court, Chapman Court Verge, I'm sure I'm getting that sounds. We've had a letter back off Lancashire County Council. There is no funding. They're not going to fund this project at all. End of story. So it's up to the, I suppose this will come back to next month's capital programme. Yeah, for councils to decide what we want to do. Okay, that's the only updates I've got. Anybody else got anything? No? Right, let's move on. Exclusion, item 12, exclusion of public and press. Okay, everybody agree? Yeah. Right.